Good afternoon. So I began my professional career, well, I'm in the helping services. I've worked as a residential care officer with young people. I've worked as a substance misuse worker with adult addicts. And I've also worked in the UK, in London, with young persons who have experienced a range of issues and problems, from neglect to abuse and exclusion from school. And the thing that I've come to realize from working with these people is that there is a common theme with all of their problems, and that is that their issues are symptoms of outside processes. There are different things that happen to them that caused their issues. So as I continued my education, I've moved from focusing on individuals to groups, specifically young people, because that's where my passion lies. And so when I heard about the London Riots occurred, I was really disturbed and annoyed at some of the responses that I heard, and saying that, oh, young people they're hooligans, and this is a lost generation. Because to me, that's simplifying this issue. That's not really looking at the problem, because young people are a product of their communities. And so for me, I feel that the community is not aware of how much it impacts young people and the way that they think and the way they interact. So I feel that they need to be taken in their proper context. So how do we do that? We do that through what's called social representations. Now, when I was in school, we said social representations are everything, because in a sense they are. There are all these different factors that go into creating our world. So in a nutshell, social representations are how communities define who they are. They tell us who we are, who others are, and how others view us, and how others view us affects how we behave. So, taking it back to the young people in the riots, to say that, oh, that their behavior was simply a factor of their personality, no. We have to look at young people in their proper context. We have to look at their social representations. So, life for young people in the UK is not that fabulous, surprisingly. They are, one, because they're young, their opinions are placed at the lower end of the hierarchical scale. Their opinions, their needs are not given as much weight as adults or certain groups over others. So because they have this low ranking, issues like, well, for example, I worked in an area of southern London called Southwark, and we had an issue with young people in gangs. And what happened was they started closing all the youth centers, budget cuts. And because there were less places for young people to go, they went out into their community, and they were hanging out in the parks and outside the chicken shops, and they formed gangs because they didn't really have anything better to do. Idle hands, mischief. So the response from the community is, oh, these young people, they're bad, they're this, they're that. But wait a minute. The young people did not create this problem. Government closed the youth centers. Young people did not close the youth centers. They were pushed out onto the streets. But because of the behaviors that's more visible, it's more easy to blame the young people than actually stopping and looking at, oh, wait, we did this to them. Now, as affluent as the UK is, it's a very rich country, very forward and progressive, the relationship between young people and their families is less than ideal. There were some studies done by UNICEF on child well-being. And of 21 rich countries that were studied on all these different aspects of child well-being, the UK placed, out of 21, 21st, right after the US. Now, when you look at the cultural norms of a society, they are heavily linked to the historical context of a location. And when you look at the young people who were involved in the riots, a lot of them were between the ages of like late teens to early mid-20s. So you're looking at 80s and 90s babies. Now, the 80s brought with it the idea of individualism, got to do for yourself. We also saw the widening of the economic gap. Rich got richer, poor got poorer, Reaganomics problems. We also, through the 80s also saw, these continuation of, we also saw technology. New technologies came out. The 90s brought in a progression of these same thoughts, as well as the introduction of the internet and new technologies, which made information got to us fast, instant. And that's how we got the idea of the internet generation and instant gratification. We also had this idea of success. Success has been told, what success looks like is when you have nice cars, big flat screen TVs, all these material possessions. And all of these things go into our minds and creating our society and how we look at the world. Now, for young people, they're a product of these thinking, of these thoughts. They are used to thinking in a certain way because of the factors that they have been placed into. So now we have to look at, with this picture, with this context of how young people, of the world that young people living in, why? We have to ask ourselves, why did they choose to riot? Why did they go out into the streets and create havoc? Well, let's start at the beginning. Basically what happened was there was a young man named Mark Duggan who was shot and killed by the police. They said that they originally thought that he had fired upon the police, but it turns out that he did not. So there was a peaceful protest organized to demand justice for this young man's death. Now, the shooting took place in an area called Tottenham in central London, and the protest ended outside of the police station. It's unknown how the riot started, but by 4:30 the next morning, 49 fires had to be put out in the Tottenham area. Now, Tottenham is in central London, but there were riots in Lewisham, in southeast London, and Clapham in southwest. And then you go to Liverpool and Manchester. Why did young people who were not attached to this area riot? Because they share the same social representations. They share the same understanding of their society as these young people. Now, I've already stated that there's a poor relation between some young people and their family members, which means they're not getting positive messages in, and they're not being told what to do. They're not being influenced positively. In some instances, they're not being parented at all. There's already a disconnect between the community in the sense that there has been no real input into young people from the people around them. I was watching one store owner said they couldn't understand why people would attack their store, why they would burn their store down. They didn't do anything to these young people. But that, in and of itself, is the answer right there. You didn't reach out to these young people beforehand. You didn't help their progression. There was no attachment between young people and the people, the structures around them. So when the opportunity presented itself to get these material forms of success that they so desire, they took it. And they didn't think about, oh, this might hurt somebody's feelings or affect their lifestyle. They didn't care because nobody cared about their feelings or their lifestyle, so why should they care about how their behaviors would affect someone else? Now, young people all over the world are pretty much given the same script. Go to school, get a good job, and you can get all the material possessions of success, all these symbols of success. Unfortunately, we live in a time where the economic crisis, we live in the reality of an economic crisis. So in the UK, the price of a university education has tripled in 1 year, meaning that a large portion of society no longer has access to education. So they cannot get the job, and they cannot get the material possessions, the symbols of success that they so desire. And they still want it, and they want it right now. So when they cannot get these symbols, these things that they so desire, they use the only means available to them. They riot. They take it. Now, you look at these factors: poor relations with families, few opportunities. You look at these things and say, wait a minute. Does that sound familiar? Where else have we heard this? Oh, right, here in Bermuda. We have the same issues. But Bermuda is not London. So our context, our issues, our social representations manifest themselves differently. And in Bermuda, we have gang violence, gun crime. So we look at these factors in the sense that, okay, poor parenting, yes, we have a lot of single-parent homes, and a single-parent home is not necessarily the problem in and of itself. A single-parent home becomes a problem when the single parent becomes a non-parent because they are trying to keep a roof over their head by working 3 jobs. What is not done, and what needs to be done, is ensuring that there is a responsible adult to watch over this child while their parent is doing all they can. Because in not doing that, we are allowing young people to raise themselves. We, as a community, need to raise our young people. Now, when you look at some of the ages of some of the young people who have been arrested in connection with gun crime and gang violence, you're looking at late teens to early 20s, which means that these young people were a product of the transitional process of our educational system. And the academic literature is full of examples of how poor education leads to social problems. Our young people are not responsible for the poor education system. They were just pushed through it. So can we really blame them when we already when we know poor education will create social problems? We live in a materialistic society. We know that. but Bermuda's surrounded by wealth. It's kind of hard to say, okay, you know, well, I want to take that trip. I really want that purse. I really like those shoes. It's all around us, and we want things. They're nice, and why not? The problem comes in that these things have taken over, and they become more important than how we relate to each other. I find in talking to a lot of people about the shootings and whatnot, one of the things that they cannot wrap their minds around is how can these young people just take a life? How can they just kill people without even thinking about it? Well, we have to remember, it's messages in. Young people love their music, and a lot of people don't want to say that, you know, well, it's not just the music. However, when you're getting negative messages in, and not enough positive messages in from their community, from their family, you can't counter it. One of the most popular rap artists out right now is Lil Wayne. And in one of his songs, he says, they say you're nobody. They say you're nobody until somebody kills you. But in my neighborhood, you're nobody until you kill somebody. Society has already told young people that they are nobody. They're at the bottom of the heap. So why not? Why not become somebody among their group? So this is kind of a dire situation, but there is hope, and there is a way forward. If we want to change young people and their behaviors and their actions, we need to change ourselves. And the first thing that we need to do is invite young people into the conversation about their future. To simply dictate to them that this is what you need to do, and that's it, it's not going to work. It hasn't worked all this time, and it will not work in the future. We have to respect the minds of young people. And we have to change how we interact with them. We have to change how we talk to them. And we have to change how we look at money. Because it's a driving force in our society, but it's also part of the motivation behind why young people have done what they have done. So as we cannot say, of course money is important. So we cannot say that, okay, money doesn't mean anything. It does. But money cannot be placed over the importance of human life and human needs. We also need to raise our community awareness. We need to take this idea and share it with others. Mindsets are changed in communication. So as we talk to others, as we change how we talk to young people, as we change how we talk about young people, we are able to change our social reality. And by changing our social reality, we change behaviors. Before I leave, I want to challenge you. As an audience member, each of you have an opportunity, an ability, and a responsibility to your community. So I'm asking you to view young people differently. Open your minds to seeing young people as they are. Social entities who have been placed into this world and placed into structures that were outside of their control and have been affected by them. And talk to other people. Let them know this. We need to be able to, we can move ourselves forward if we change how we communicate to young people. Thank you.